What's up? Welcome to Breaking Through the Darkness, where we smash ignorance in the face and break the stigma surrounding so many mental health issues today. We're going to talk about the difference between mental health and mental illness, because they ain't the same thing. Knowing the difference can drastically change our perspective on mental health and ultimately help break that stigma. For many people, when you mention mental health, they automatically associate that with mental illness, but they are not interchangeable terms. Mental health and mental illness are two different things, although they are essentially two sides of the same coin. When we talk about mental health, we're actually referring to our emotional and psychological state, our social well-being, and also how we feel about ourselves and interact with others. Sometimes our mental health can be negatively affected by the circumstances around us, like for example, a death in the family, or losing a job, or a breakup in a relationship. In most cases, we can improve our mental health by monitoring our nutrition, sleep, exercise, as well as keeping healthy relationships and participating in wholesome activities. Mental health is not the same as mental illness, but poor mental health can lead to mental illness, as well as other physical illnesses. Now, when we talk about mental illness, we're referring to a wide range of disorders that can significantly affect our mood, thinking, and behavior. It can cause problems at home, at work, or in other social situations, and it can affect anyone regardless of age, gender, social status, or race. Mental illnesses are more than just emotional responses to negative situations. They can be caused by biological factors such as genes, brain chemistry, or even family history of mental illness, as well as social and environmental factors such as trauma or abuse. Because of this, a person suffering from mental illness cannot simply overcome it with sheer willpower alone. That is why sincere yet misguided advice such as get over it or be positive are of little help most of the time. Now you might ask, do I have a mental illness? In the DSM-5, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, there are over 300 different types of mental illnesses listed. The DSM-5 is like the Bible of psychiatry, which all mental health professionals use to identify and diagnose a mental illness in a person. The main groups of mental disorders are anxiety disorders, eating disorders like anorexia or bulimia, mood disorders like depression or bipolar, personality disorders like OCD or borderline, psychotic disorders like schizophrenia, substance abuse disorders like drug addiction, and trauma-related disorders like PTSD. Think about it this way. We all have our days where we feel a little under the weather. You might have an ache in your body or a migraine, allergies. Despite feeling physically unwell, it doesn't necessarily mean we have poor health or that we have a serious illness. It's the same with mental health. We may experience days where we feel stressed or sad, but that doesn't mean we have a mental illness. We all experience a range of emotions. It is when we're always feeling depressed or anxious and can't even remember a day when we weren't feeling down. That's when it's quite possible or even likely that we may have a legit mental illness. If you do suspect that you have any of the mental illnesses I mentioned earlier, then you should seek professional medical help as soon as you can. With the right treatment, people can and do recover from mental illness. Friends and family members can be important influences to help someone get the treatment and services they need. If we look at mental health as a spectrum, we can probably find at one end of that spectrum being mentally ill, and at the other end, mentally healthy. Now, most of us will probably find ourselves somewhere in between those two endpoints. In mainstream psychology, the tendency is to focus more on curing or decreasing mental illness, for example, by lowering levels of stress or anxiety. In the relatively new branch of psychology called positive psychology, or as it's sometimes called, the science of happiness, the emphasis is directly on enhancing mental health and to raise levels of happiness, meaning, and satisfaction in life. If we expand on that spectrum we illustrated earlier, we can divide it in half into two models. The first half we can call the disease model, where things like depression, anxiety, anger, or neurosis can fall into. This disease or medical model is where traditional mental health professionals operate in. The preoccupation of working in the disease model is usually about repairing the worst in life, focusing on weaknesses, curing illness, escaping unhappiness, overcoming deficiencies, and avoiding pain. The aim of the disease model is to get us from minus to zero, which is the absence of illness. But being mentally healthy is not just the absence of mental illness or disorder. From the perspective of positive psychology, there is much more to mental health than just decreasing or avoiding mental illness. The second half of our mental health spectrum, the plus scale, we can call the health model, where things like happiness, satisfaction, joy, and well-being fall into. The goal of positive psychology and working in the health model is to go beyond zero and neutral health and into the plus or positive end of our mental health spectrum. In operating in the health model, positive psychology is all about building the best in life, focusing on strengths, building well-being, increasing happiness, developing competencies, and finding enjoyment. Every branch of psychology is trying to get the best possible outcome for patients and individuals who are striving to improve their mental health. But the journey getting there can be fundamentally different. In operating in a positive scale and working with positive emotions, strength, resilience, we can significantly reduce negative functioning, overcome mental health problems like depression, and ultimately flourish in our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. If you are interested to learn more about positive psychology, I've included links down below in the description to notable books and websites that I personally found helpful. Everybody has mental health, but not everybody has a mental illness. You can have poor mental health, but no mental illness. Just remember, mental illness has to be diagnosable with symptoms that persist for a lengthy period of time, depending on the condition. But we don't have to wait for a diagnosis just for us to realize we need help. Take care of your mental health now, like today, so that tomorrow or the near future, you won't have to deal with the painful struggle of a mental illness. Check out these other videos on the channel to learn more about your mental health. Until next time, reframe your mind.